Justice Department will not have any further indictments, according to the special counsel.
That's right. Well, let's bring in somebody who knows a lot about this. Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus, the author of the book, The Case Against Impeaching Trump. Well, did the case against impeaching Trump just get better? What do you know right now, Professor?
Well, no question. It got better legally. Legally, we now know there will be no more indictments from the special counsel. But be wary. This will be a one-sided report. It will draw every conceivable inference against the president. They did not hear exculpatory evidence. The witnesses against the president were not cross-examined. That's why I called for the Attorney General not to release the report immediately, but first turn it over to the Trump defense team, let them write their rebuttal, let them be issued simultaneously, let the public then be able to judge the adversary process rather than looking at a one-sided report. So I think it's too early for the president to celebrate. He's off the hook legally, as we all knew he would be. You can't indict a president for firing somebody who he is entitled to fire, and there's no such crime as collusion. But he's not off the hook politically, and I think this report will be very, very critical, and it must be answered. You know, I'm doing an introduction to a volume of the report, and I will certainly apply my critical ability of 50 years of practicing criminal law to look at what the conclusions of the report are, and also I will wait until the Trump legal defense team has an opportunity to respond so that I can evaluate both sides and give my readers and the American public a real sense of whether this is a strong or a weak condemnation of the president. But it will be a condemnation of the president.
So, Mr. Dershowitz, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and Minority Leader Chuck Schumer in the Senate have already said that Congress should get a first look at this report before the president does. Can you explain that this is a separation of power issue when the executive branch owns the report? Does the president have a right to see it before Congress does?
Definitely, yes. Number one, the president is the executive branch. Number two, basic fairness requires that. You don't send a report, which is one-sided, over to your enemies in Congress without having the subject of the report have an opportunity to respond. The Democratic members of Congress don't want the president to respond. They want the news cycle to get out there. Oh, these are the accusations. These are the terrible things he did. And wait 2 weeks or a month, maybe you'll hear the other side. That's not the way due process or fairness should operate. So let's take a deep breath. Let's understand this is a long process. If it takes another few days, it's much better to hear both sides of the issue before jumping to conclusions or rushing.
Speaking of jumping to conclusions, for a couple of years, many Republicans allied with the president have been going after Robert Mueller. They may now like Robert Mueller a little bit more.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there's still going to be some criticism of Mueller's one-sidedness. We have to wait and see. And I do think the Democrats will find some things in the report to seize on. The report may also give a kind of roadmap for further investigations by the Democrats in the House, by the Southern District of New York, and by others. So this is the end of one very important phase of the investigation. But it's not the end of the entire investigation. The Democrats are determined to go, slice by slice after the president through 80 subpoenas, 15 investigations, make it impossible for him to govern. I predict here that there will be a court case against Congress for misusing the authority of their investigation. Remember, they're supposed to investigate for purposes of legislating. I'm old enough to remember the McCarthy period when right-wing Republicans misused the House Un-American Activities Committees not to legislate, but to expose. And that's not a proper function of Congress.
On that point, let's take a look